Now, the whole point of lockdowns at the beginning was to protect our NHS. If these sorts of things are happening now, are we in danger of not doing that as we approach Monday?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest risk of all, isn't it? Is that this is going to put a burden on the NHS. We've also seen figures recently from the northeast where intensive care units are filling up. And what that means is you can't do complex elective surgery because you need those ICU beds. And so it's wrong to think that because some parts of the country are doing well and the NHS is functioning quite well there, that this is not actually affecting other parts of the NHS. And that's the most significant thing. What we were just getting to, actually, is a state of play where we were able to start to deal with the backlog, the enormous and significant backlog of people who are ill and need proper hospital treatment, including complex surgery. We're just starting to address that. And now we're faced with this other issue. And not only is it a concern for the patients, but the burden and the stress on those poor folk working in hospitals is the whole thing is just frightening. And it just seems that we're going back to square one if we're not careful. And by square one, I mean, we could end up in another lockdown situation if we're not too careful.
But when does lockdown end, Professor Young? Just some more context. Average mortality in the UK over recent weeks has been lower than the average year pre-COVID. You're now 14 times more likely to die of flu or pneumonia than you are of COVID. Yes, these case numbers are high because we're doing over 1 million tests a day, but COVID is not killing very, very many people. Each death is obviously a tragedy. I'm not belittling it. But in the round, there are far, far more dangerous things in the world at the moment than COVID-19, and we're not locking down the economy for them.
Not sure I totally agree with that, Liam. I think that one of the issues we've got is we had 582 hospitalisations yesterday, and every hospitalisation puts burden on the NHS, and that has knock-on effects for the way that we're treating other patients who are also...
Generally younger people who are a lot less vulnerable, right? We never hear that. The hospitalisations among younger people, and a lot of those COVID cases in hospital are caught in a nosocomial context. They're caught in hospital. People get COVID in hospital. They don't enter hospital with COVID in about half of cases, according to the latest data.
Yeah, of course, there's a mix of where people
you
are getting
say, of course, but no one ever says that.
No, there's a mix, and that mix will be compounded by what's going to happen on Monday, and indeed by what we've seen over the last week or so, with more people out and about. It's bound to happen. Having said that, we are in the summer months, and I agree. I think we have to get out of this, but we should be doing this in a much more measured, progressive way, graduated way, and being careful. And it's very confusing for people now, isn't it? Just take the face mask issue. It's just very, very confusing. Lots of mixed messages. And I accept what you're saying, but we still have a burden of long COVID, and we still have to be careful about what's going to happen over the winter. The important thing is to get as many people double jabbed as possible. That's what we need to be doing.
Right.
And
absolutely right.
But I have to say, in my opinion, we should also be vaccinating children over the age of 12, because we know that long COVID can affect that population, that those youngsters can spread infection, and to protect them, to protect their families, and to protect their education, we should be doing what they're doing in America and what they're doing in other countries like Israel, and starting to vaccinate younger people, so we can get that level of, dare I mention the word, herd immunity up in the population. That's what will take us.
OK, I just want to go back to your point about NHS staff being pinged, because I've read of other hospitals who are in the same position. They're having to cancel elective operations. But what's difficult to work out is if that is because so many staff are being pinged and are therefore absent, rather than huge numbers of people being in hospital due to COVID. For example, 275 members of staff at Queen Elizabeth Hospital have been instructed to isolate or are sick with COVID-19. And there are over 1,000 staff absent from work at that hospital at the moment, presumably because people have got lots of leave stacked up, etc., etc. So is it the staff shortages that are actually leading to the cancelling of these elective operations rather than huge numbers of COVID patients?
I think it's clearly going to be it's a tricky one, Gloria. It's going to be a combination of both things. But what it tells us is that we've got to do something about this pinging. And the thing we've got to do, I think, is get better testing out for people, so that we don't have to have people isolating if they're not positive. And we also need to be in a position where we move. I know it's going to happen on, what is it, August the 16th, but the idea of, people who are double vaccinating not needing to self-isolate is also important. And I think that's what we need to do. We need to change the dynamic, because clearly this whole, as you're calling it now, pingdemic, is causing enormous concern. And of course, it's just a consequence. It's a correlate of just the number of people that are infected in the population. But we know that double vaccination protects. And that's why it's important to get everybody double vaxxed, and why we need to be moving to a position where we take that into account, so that not everybody's having to self-isolate when they get that ping.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.